I wanted to tell a story about a time that I was doing one of those Clover outlet centers, and which was like a discount outlet center, and they had them all over South Jersey and into Pennsylvania. And I was doing a special appearance, and a gentleman sat down at my table, and he had a cigar box full of hair. And I asked, and he told me to put my hand in the cigar box and to touch the hair. And I said, well, why should I do that? And he said, well, his wife had died, and while she was laying in her deathbed, he cut off her hair. That a psychic should go in, touch the hair, and find out where she hid her money. So he wanted me to do this, and I refused. I felt that it was unethical to do that. Uh, but I just wanted to tell the story. We had a lot of unusual people that came to us. Sometimes I would have somebody come with, and they would have a couple of bodyguards. I was known as the man who saw events before they happened, and it was reputed that that the movie Next with Nicolas Cage was based on my public appearances. A lot of the people I worked around and I knew thought that a movie would be made about me. As the man who sees things before they happen. In one case, I was doing a show in Atlantic City, and a gentleman said that would be a good idea for a movie, The Man Who Sees Things Before They Happen. I said, what would you call the movie? He said, I would call the movie What's Next? And then when the movie Next came out, I suppose that it may have been based on that, but that's what I think, and that's what people around me thought also. But that's always a matter of conjecture, but basically, my whole main thing was predicting events before they occurred through various methods that I used. For many years, I've been practicing and studying what they call divination. Divination is actually various ways of figuring out through a person's name or birthday or planets or numbers. And actually, astronumerology is almost like painting by numbers. We're doing astrology through numbers, but through these various things in palmistry, to come up with a method to find out when people's lives are going to change. And that's really my specialty. When I tell people that I teach divination, they look at me like, what is that? That's predicting when and what will happen to people and with whom might be involved in these things. When I was in my early 30s, by then I had taken these numerology studies and palmistry studies and worked with Thelma Van Worth and joined groups and so forth and so on. And I was still hooked up to the family that raised me, and there were a bunch of characters. One was actually worse than the other. They were very self-serving, and uh, the psychic field actually helped me to detach from them. And I learned the art of detachment, that when somebody's not nice or not pleasant, you kind of get away from them. It's kind of like you don't keep sticking your finger on a match and keep getting burned. That somewhere along the line, you got to go somewhere and cool off. Well, I started teaching divination. I went through these various studies, and I started doing a lot of people with the public. And to this day, I still teach classes at a local college, Rowan College, on divination. And I'm the only one that I know that actually specializes in event predictive analysis. That means when something is going to change in somebody's life and with what persons and circumstances are going to take place, and even if the person doesn't know it. The only glitch to this, and I did a tape on this before in this series, is that people don't really understand when things start. Things actually start. A change starts to occur when people make a plan, make a decision, or have a conversation which starts the ball rolling, even if it's down in the future, for something to occur in the future. And I use the example of somebody picking up a stone and throwing it across a lake and it bounces. And I would say, well, when did the action start? And people would say, when you threw the stone, or when the stone got released. No, it's when you decided to pick up the stone. Even before it ever entered your hand, that was the beginning of that change. It's one thing I try to explain to people. This is when the change starts. And in the predictions, that's encased in this. It's like the cusp of 1 month actually being the start of the next sign. It usually occurs somewhere around the 18th to 21st of the previous month. The sign of Leo will start at the end of July. This sign of Pisces will actually start at the end of February, etc. And then it goes into full bloom. But the beginning of change is when something begins and a plan is formed that causes something to happen in the future. And that's the nature of divination. And I teach divination in many different ways. I do the abracadabra with the name, which brings it into an inverted triangle. I do the pinnacles and challenges and what planets and numbers and initials and letters of people who are involved in these changes. I do the compatibility of people by comparing the both days of the month that they're both born, as well as what years they're born, which is the elements. And I combine all of these and reading the lines of the hand and doing uh, regular card reading. I've done tarot in the past, but I prefer to teach regular card reading because it's a lot more to the point and direct. But in any event, I teach event predictive analysis. That is my specialty. This is a course on name analysis. It's July 23rd, 2016. And this is the way it works. If you have the name Linda, you have the N as a hinge letter, which is an odd letter. And when it's an N as an odd letter, it's a need to be needed. And because the I is in the middle of the L and the N, they pride themselves on being liked and also on being useful. But because the N is in the middle, there's a challenge. It's what they call a Mercury challenge, which has to do with Juno Gemini people, as well as so you have it's a Gemini and a Virgo challenge. So it involves anybody born under any of those signs, as well as anybody born on the 5th, 14th, or 23rd day of any month. If we have the name Roy, Roy is kind of a thinker because his name begins with an R and winds up with a Y, which is learning by experience. And he has an O as his hinge letter or middle letter, and there would be conflicts about doing things his way. Now, O is a Venus challenge and it involves Taurus or Libra people with an F as any one of their initials, an O any place in their name, or an X or a Z actually. X and Z are somehow related. The name Carl, his name starts off with a C. That means activities are extremely important to him. So are siblings, young people, social situations. And he always goes in the direction of the L, which is being liked. He's drawn very much to the Jupiter situation, which is anybody born on the 3rd, 12th, or 30th of any month, which relates to Sagittarius or Pisces as well. Now, the name Wilson, a W has a lot to do with pride. They pride themselves on being liked because the I is in the middle of the L and the W. And also, they pride themselves on being prideful. If somebody doesn't treat them right, they just kind of detached. And they're very drawn to anybody in Mercury, which is the planet Mercury, which is Gemini Virgo. Over here, I have the name Frank. Frank has a hinge letter of an A, which means there's a challenge with Leo or Aquarius people, and the person has to learn not to step on toes, and they have to learn to be tactful and whatever with people. Now I have this little layout here, which is somebody born on September 20th, 1944, which is an 18-9 year. So this person, the 2 cycle, which is the moon cycle, is extremely important to them. The moon relates to, the moon relates